Hello, star children. I'm back. Just doing a very late check-in. It's been a beautiful evening of making music and making art and playing with my daughter. And I got to see the moon from where I work this evening, so I was inspired to record some music, which I did. And now I just have a couple thoughts that I wanted to share about being a witch, what it means to be a witch to me, and why I call myself that. Why am I a witch? What does that mean? I have a quote from Nayyirah Waheed. I want to live so densely, lush, and slow in the next few years that a year becomes 10 years and my past becomes only a page in the book of my life. I really love that quote. It's very powerful. And that is sort of the heart of what being a witch is to me. Witchcraft for me is an identity. It reminds me of my strength and my autonomy as a woman and as a creatrix. I'm a musician and an herbalist, and I'm a dancer and a poet. I'm a mother and a singer. And I feel more free doing all of those things after coming out of the broom closet than I did when I was still in the broom closet. It was much harder for me to express myself and to be open about who I was before I came out as a witch to everybody. I'm a chaos witch and a spiritual anarchist, which basically means that I explore and respect a lot of different paths, and I cultivate my own unique paradigms which shift somewhat regularly with my experiences and my research. So I try very hard to remove dogma from most of who I am. I like to imagine that I don't know everything and that I can always learn something from people who are different from me in any way. I still have a pretty strict, moral, ethical code, value system, but I think that's based more on humanitarian efforts, philosophy. It's more universal rather than personal cultural tendencies. It strives to be more universal anyways. And yeah, so taking a drink. Being a witch brings me a sense of community. I'm a pantheist and a nature lover, and I feel more encouraged and free to explore those parts of myself under the label of witch. I have always felt that way, but I didn't put those terms to it until after I came out of the broom closet. And then it was like all these other parts of my identity kind of fell into place. I'm also pansexual and genderqueer or gender fluid. So I find a lot of empathy and comfort in the witchy community for those parts of me. I don't have any problem expressing myself. If somebody identifies as a witch, I feel safe. And being a witch, it does remind me of my personal power as well. I make choices every day, and I am aware of that. I have a strong sense of agency and personal power. I know I can support myself and my family emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I'm aware of the impact that my choices have. So I try to be, I am conscious of my behavior, my energy, what I bring to the table, and my relationships. So it just helps me, I think, to be a better lover and a better partner and a better mother and a better friend. I just generally, having that identity helps me to be a better human being all around. It also helps me, being a witch, to cope with depression. I know I'm not alone. I can always reach out for support. I know I have control over the choices that I make. I know that I'm a powerful enough person to hold my own hand when I'm going through something really difficult and really hard. I have the emotional security and intelligence to empathize with myself and to hold space for myself. And that's something that I did not have before coming out of the broom closet. Even when I identified as a chaos witch, but I didn't really come out to everybody, it made it a lot harder for me to be in the seat of my power and be there for myself. When I was really struggling, I tended to reach out and grasp for the closest thing I could find, and that was always changing. It gives me a powerful feeling of autonomy, being a witch. I can give myself approval. I can okay my own choices. I give myself permission to do whatever it is that I need to do, whether it's crying or screaming in a pillow or dancing, listening to music really loud, collaging all day, painting or playing with Play-Doh all day, like whatever it is that we need to do to make ourselves okay. Like, I know I don't feel guilty. I don't feel bad. I mean, sometimes the guilt comes, but I can work through it. And I know that I can give myself permission to do these things. It's good enough for me. Being a witch is good enough. I'm reminded that I don't have to give anyone an excuse or an explanation or a story. It gives me the identity, gives me strength enough to have firmer boundaries with people, so I have more self-respect. No means no. It encourages me to take better care of myself in a better way. It helps me to be more consistent. I tend to check in with different projects more. You know, I have a wide variety of interests and activities, and after coming out of the broom closet, I enjoy all of them more. I allow myself to enjoy all of them more. And it reminds me of all of the many reasons why I love myself and why self-love is so important to me. For me, coming out of the broom closet and starting the journey of self-love happened at the same time. It was very serendipitous. There were a lot of things all at once that came at me from many different angles, and it was just kind of like, oh, okay, this is happening. This is the direction we're going in. And it was all, like I said, stuff that I had already believed for probably like 10 years prior, but I hadn't felt confident enough in myself to come out and say, yes, this is who I am. This is why I believe what I believe. This is what I believe. And, you know, it's very personal, the why. I'm never going to tell my whole story as far as the why. Everything behind why I do what I do. There's parts of that that are sacred to me, and they're just for me. I don't feel the need to share that part of myself with everybody else. I can't remember who said it originally, but I heard it from Kellyanne Maddox, something along the lines of, what is kept to yourself is the most powerful of witchcraft or spellcraft or intention, something along those lines. And I feel like that's very powerful. It very much speaks to my personal practice and the kind of archaic level of secrecy that I held around it for quite some time. So that's it. That's what it is to be a witch to me. I'm sure it's different for different people, I know that. A lot of people would say something like, having an altar makes you a witch. I didn't always have an altar. I've only had an altar for the last couple of years. It sort of happened when I came out of the broom closet. That was my tangible material psychodrama that went along with my transition from being in the broom closet to being out of the broom closet. And it was very powerful for me. It had a very immediate result and effect for me, having an altar. But I didn't have one for probably upwards of 10 years of practicing chaos magic, and I still had pretty astounding results when I was actually consistent enough with myself to practice. The nice thing about coming out of the broom closet is that I'm a heck of a lot more consistent. I definitely practice every day, even if it's just something small like a short meditation or lighting an incense candle and doing a tarot spread. I do something every day, and my journal practice has always been kind of sporadic, and since I've started doing the tarot business, it's become a little bit more sporadic, a little bit less consistent. So that's something that I definitely want to work on with myself. But I've had video journals and voice journals that I've kept pretty consistently over the last couple years. So there are other things that people would say make you a witch. Carving out sacred space, doing rituals, and rituals are some of those things. It's so personal. How you carve out sacred space, for some people that is just lighting some incense or setting out some crystals or lighting some candles. It doesn't have to be like the chants and the motions and the directions and everything. Like, that's all well and fine if you enjoy that, but it doesn't have to be so complex. It can be something very simple, and very personal, as long as it's meaningful for you. I think that's the most important part. But that's for everything about being a witch. A good friend of mine who was part of that serendipitous chain of events that led me to come out of the broom closet. I made her some ginger turmeric. It's like a tea, but it's a decoction, which is just a very strong tea. You boil the roots for at least 30 minutes or so, or you can do it on low heat for a couple hours. And she said, that makes you a witch, right? And I thought it was hilarious at the time, but then I realized that's very true. There were things that I was doing every day that were very witchy. that I didn't necessarily give myself credit for, because I had some pretty rigid dogma that I installed in myself, I think as a kind of reflex from jumping away from the Christian dogma that I grew up with. I jumped into the chaos magic dogma that I found that I thought was perfect and I loved in every way, but I was very rigid about what it was to be a chaot. And that rigidity, that dogma, kept me in a very small box that I did not identify until 10 years, post 10 years of practicing chaos magic. So that was a huge, much needed wake up call for me. And then of course, watching Kellyanne's videos on YouTube was just a beautiful refreshment for my soul and my spirit. It was so perfect in every way. It helped me just align everything that I wanted to do and find out what it was, what I really was, and what it really meant to me to practice these things and to be self-loving about it. So I guess my point is there's a whole lot of stuff. There's a whole mess of stuff you can get involved in. And it's really up to you to set the boundaries and set the requirements and establish your rule. You are the emperor of your own practice, and you're allowed to make it anything you want. For me, it's very much about personal autonomy, spiritual anarchy, creativity, self-expression, love, empowerment. And I hope, honestly, that it is all of those things for you too. I hope you express it however you desire, but I feel like everybody deserves to be empowered to choose what they think is right for them and to make it work in their own personal way, and to choose to be autonomous about it. So with that, I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you, star children, and hopefully I'll be making another video very soon. Have a good one. Good night.